everybody. Tonight, playing Katharina Kepler, we have...
Me, Liz. The wit.
Playing Johannes Kepler, we have...
Which to be.
Sophia Loren.
Warden Shrek will be played by...
Lucia Burns.
Prisoner Muller.
That's me.
Duke Johann Friedrich of Württemberg.
That's me.
Jean Bodin.
I think that's me too. And it is Jean Baudin.
Sorry. Executioner and Constable Einhorn.
Chris.
And the prostitute lady, Andrea Faber.
Also Lucia.
The Devil's Mistress, Act 1, Katharina's Arrest, Friday, August 7th, 1620. A conversation between a prisoner and a jailer. The set has dim lighting until Katharina is put in chains.
Wake up, you worthless drunk.
Uh,
Ugh, I'm told you'll have a cellmate tonight. A lady should cheer you up, wouldn't you say?
a lady in the next cell. I would be of more cheer if she shared my own, like in the dream you just woke me from. Why so late in the night with the news? Do I know this lady?
You may. She is from here in Leonberg. She is well off, I hear, with a son who is chief mathematician to the king.
And I better look her as well. I could be betrothed before I leave here to a fine lady with a nice house and a full wine cellar, or at least give her the favor of my company during these cold, lonely nights. Yes, indeed. I would be doing you a favor by saving you the supreme our cell doors unlocked. That would be quite considerate of me, don't you think?
Considerate, yeah, but not on my watch. I'm going to propose something different, something you may even find more favorable to yourself.
Oh, perhaps there is a reason you couldn't wait until morning. This is not more of your knavery humor at my expense.
Oh, I am most serious. And if you succeed, I can have your punishment for habitual vagrancy canceled. If you fail, it would be carried out as scheduled. I mind you then that no lady, not even this one, will ever want to share your company. Certainly not after seeing you paraded in public wearing that charming mask of an ass.
Consider me your humble servant. I am all ears.
See? I told you one day you would come to delight in your pretty new face. Seriously, if you would benefit everyone if this lady would confess to her crime. It would benefit everyone if this lady would confess to her crime before her inquisition. If you can loosen her tongue, Constable Ehrenhorn has promised to release you.
This is generous. Might I know the crime to which I am to get her to confess?
It's a crime against God, man, and nature. She is a witch.
Huh. There goes my dream of a life of luxury. A question then. What if we were married before she is executed? Would I inherit the property?
Oh, you are a scoundrel. You might make a fitting couple at that, but I doubt there will be anything left of her estate after she pays damages to all her victims.
Then I assure you, given my renowned ability to charm the most timid and frigid of women, I will easily loosen this lady's tongue.
You will find the task of getting a lady to admit a crime that costs her life more difficult than simply betting one of your barflies. She has already admitted to being able to heal. The law requires her to confess to doing harm.
A good witch or a bad witch? Seems as I win either way. If I succeed in getting her to confess, I gain my freedom. If I fail, I could end up happily married.
You can forget ever walking out of here, and you can certainly forget about marriage, even if she did. That must be her now. I warn you, not a word from you of our agreement. I'll be watching you closely. A small reward for my part is also at stake. Constable, what have we here?
Warden, we are releasing a Catherine Kepler into your custody to be kept here in chains until trial.
Staggering drunk, he rolls Katharina out of the box onto the floor in the cell on stage right.
This calls...
Katharina can already be hidden away, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
This calls for a celebration drink.
Why the box? Was the lady too much for you to handle?
Only her vulgar tongue. The box was recommended for our security. We aren't worried a bit ourselves, but she could cast a spell and escape her shackles.
We are done here. She won't escape now.
We leave the old woman to your care now, and wish all of you a most pleasant night together.
It would be pleasant if you were of such generous spirit as to share some of that ale you were drinking.
Warden, give me that cup. I'll leave it here by the door. Whoever reaches it first can have it. Good luck with that.
Warden, a bit of ale might help lubricate my parched tongue. If you feel like sharing, that is.
I should have extortion added to your list of crimes.
Release my shackles, young man.
I suggest you get used to them.
Then I want a different cell. This one is damp and has a wretched smell. Don't you clean it? I have seen better pigsties.
You'll be able to make your very own soon, but I will buy some wood to start a fire. I'm feeling a bit chilled. Now, with your money, I can afford to heat the whole jail.
What do you mean, my money?
Prisoners don't get free and room and board here. You have to pay for it.
Blasted government. Everyone has their hands in my pockets. Then give me a better cell.
Surely, but then you would have to share with Herr Mueller.
My dear lady, at the risk of not taking me as the gentleman I am, I would be willing to extend you my hospitality. You are welcome to share my humble accommodations. I find the manner in which these rogues treated you to be deplorable. A lady of your stature should be shown the utmost respect.
Sir, I keep that reputation by not sharing rooms with strange men.
Ooh, a witch who declines all offers except devils, I hear.
I see. I am already judged guilty. I have you know, I am falsely accused by my conniving neighbor, Ursula Reinbold, who is scheming to avoid having to pay damage in my family's lawsuit against her. You are all being fooled.
That is what all you miserable hags say. Right now, I think I will go outside and bring in more firewood.
Madam, I, for one, believe you. Now, I am wrongly accused as well. I sit shackled here for no just reason. We both could use a friend. You can trust me to be your ally. I apologize if my invitation offended you. I fear my time in this dungeon with, might I say, lower class companions has temporarily tarnished my otherwise pristine character. I expect to be released very soon with the aid of a friend in, let's say, of high position of authority. Perhaps if I know your story, I could persuade him to intervene on your behalf as well.
Well, not that I don't trust you, but who is your friend?
Oh, I am not at liberty to say right now. I hope you can understand the need for discretion.
Of course. Then what was your crime? It couldn't be worse than the charge I face. I might add, betrayal by a supposed long-term friend.
I, too, was falsely charged. I was arrested for public drunkenness. But I expect to be released very soon with an appropriate apology. My condition was merely a common illness suffered by many. It was unfortunate that I was overcome by a temporary state of unconsciousness in the markplatz and not my own bed. Like you, I am confident that I will clear up this misunderstanding.
Assuming I believe you were really sober, how is it that you are unemployed? You sound like an educated young man.
Oh, as you notice, I favor a good ale. I own a brewery that has been in my family for over 400 years. It moves across generation to generation.
You no longer own it?
Suppose I still own it, but now it sits idle and going to ruin.
Why is that?
Oh, first, the yields from our hops declined. Then we started losing our workers. First, they joined the king's army to fight against the Turks. Then the plague swept through my village, and we lost even more of our workers. Finally, my parents and brother died of the cursed plague. The final calamity came when a troop of deserters from the war passed through and helped themselves to the last of my inventory. But they couldn't leave it at that. They went on to carry away most of my brewing equipment. I had only taste tested my ale to that point. But that night, I drank my first full mug of beer. I confess to you, I kept that mug full and never saw the bottom of it until I landed here.
Others lose their businesses and find work.
No, you may not understand since you have a family, but I had not yet married, and now, without a profession or membership in a guild, I am not permitted to marry. This disaster not only cost me a family of my own, but I lost a business that had survived for untold generations of Mullers. Now, even our family name will disappear, thanks to me. How am I to live with this failure on my shoulders? I deserve this humiliation and punishment for that alone. How could I face my family if I were to see them in heaven? I am so ashamed.
I am sorry. This is truly a great burden for you to carry. I often thought I might have had an easier life if I had been born a man. Listening to your story, I'm not so sure. I do suspect that if I were a man, I would not so easily be charged as a witch. I am even double cursed.
What do you mean?
I was born with a dark complexion in a village of all blondes. It's always marked me as a different in their superstitious minds. I don't think I was ever really accepted, no matter how pious I was or how much I practiced Christian charity to others.
Why are you darker? Are you part Jew or gypsy?
Well, most suspect I am half Jew. Now they say it is because I signed a pact with the devil.
Am I a Jew and a witch? Oh, well, I trust it was not because you are a witch. Why did they think you part Jew?
That was because I worked for a while as a servant for some Jews. They hire outsiders to keep their fires going during their winter holidays, you know. Then later, they were suspicious of my son's interest in Jewish teachings. He also became friends with Rabbi Love.
How does he know that, Rabbi?
He says he met him when Tycho Brahe, my son's famous astronomer friend, took him to the alchemist lab near the rabbi's home. They shared many interests, not just religious, but we are not Jewish.
Then why are you darker?
Oh, hellfire. Why do I care about letting family skeletons out of the closet now? My mother was ravished by a Spaniard. He was one of those mercenaries passing through our town. When my grandfather discovered she was pregnant, he beat her for weeks to try to cause a miscarriage. He had the best intentions and hoped to save their reputation. My presence here is proof of his failure. My mother and grandparents then wanted nothing to do with me. I don't think I ever caught my mother looking me in the eye. Fortunately, my dear aunt took care of me as her own.
Oh, and then I hope your life improved.
Only until I was 12. Then my aunt died, and I was on my own for a while. But I was attractive and pious. And my grandfather, who was a respected city official, felt pity on me and had me betrothed to a young merchant here in Leonberg. I thought then I would live a charmed life. It all looked so promising, but that was not to be.
How so?
My husband, like your workers, felt it was his patriotic duty to join the king's army and left me alone. I raised 4 young children, worked our fields, managed the family business. Then Johannes came down with smallpox, and I could no longer survive without help. So I traveled over 90 kilometers to find my husband and bring him home. Our son survived, but this has remained puny. Then our second son started having seizures. The doctor said he would have them his whole life. My husband soon decided that he would make more money in the army, and he missed the camaraderie of his men. I assumed being a soldier must be his calling, so I gave him my blessing and he left.
So you were left alone again.
Yes, again. I had hoped that my sons would soon be old enough to help in the business or the fields. Johannes could not, but fortunately he was very bright and was accepted into the Lutheran University when he was 14. Now he is the king's chief mathematician. Then Heinrich, despite his epilepsy, left to join his father in the army. After his father died, he gained a position as an imperial guard. So for a while, both my eldest sons were in Prague in service to the king. My third son, Christoph, took over the family pewter business, and my daughter married a local pastor and moved away.
So, like me, you are now alone?
Yes, now I am. I thought I might have Heinrich live with me after King Rudolph died. He moved home, but was quite ill and died a year later. I felt even more alone. You obviously know what it is like to lose your whole family.
Yes, I do. How did you manage to deal with it?
I made God and church my family. I attended more services and started volunteering and devoting my time to care for sick neighbors who couldn't cook or clean for themselves. I enjoyed just plain hospitality too, sharing a meal and a wine with friends. Sitting here, I feel so betrayed. I wish that, like most of my friends my age, I might have already met my maker. It would have been a happier ending for me.
Enter Johannes Kepler and Warden.
I told Herr Kepler you would be sleeping, but he insists on seeing you.
Margarita came over in hysterics telling me you were arrested tonight. Let me look at you. Did they hurt you?
Only my belief in a fair and just trial.
Here, sit down with me. We're also sure that the lawyers and I repudiated all the charges against you. I'm astonished that with this proof and all the letters from the Duke, that the charges would not be dropped. This is such a shock. We have to come up with a different plan now. I'm sorry, but the warden only gave me 5 minutes with you. I must quickly prepare you for what to expect now.
I'm listening.
The court and anyone they send to see you will use every trick to confuse you into a confession. Don't say anything they can twist and use against you. Always state clearly that you are innocent. Don't mumble a yes or no.
I have done that. I even insult them to show that I am not such an easy prey.
Mother, I am not sure that will work in your favor, but it should throw them off guard a bit. The very least you can expect now is having to stay in cold and unsanitary conditions. A good diet will keep you healthy, so I pray to have food brought to you, and I will appeal to have you moved to a better cell, better prison.
Thank you. I don't have to tell you how disgusting it is here. The warden included.
If we lose our next appeal, the court could sentence you to one of two things. They may sentence you to watch someone else being tortured while the executioner shows you his instruments. At this point, Don't be afraid. Remember, they cannot use them on you unless you confess.
I will not confess, but I don't know how I can handle watching someone tortured.
Remember, there is nothing you could do to save them anyway. Fill your mind with prayers.
Prayers haven't worked well.
Then try religious hymns. Anything to keep you from focusing on what they want you to see or hear to make you frightened. Now, I don't want to consider the second possibility.
You mean torture?
Yes. I'm afraid that since we have already disproved all the charges against you, as obvious means the court is biased against you. God forbid it. That sentence is now possible.
At my age, no one survives torture. They would all finally be rid of me, and I of those bastards.
Mother, but we don't want to be rid of you. Not this way. Please, don't be concerned about what the courts and the neighbors want. To hell with them. It anguishes me to see you it anguishes me to have to say this to you, but you must know. I have talked it over with Christophe and Margaretha, and if it comes to torture, no, God forbid, we want you to confess immediately. Promise me you will confess.
Why would I do that?
Because then we will plead for a merciful and quick execution before being tortured. I can't bear to think of that as your fate. I have been summoned to Prague, and this may be our last time together. If the court prescribes torture, I beg you to confess.
Please don't cry. You have to be strong. I don't want you upset, but I would never confess to being a witch. It is not because I'm afraid of dying. Right now, I would welcome it. It is because I don't want the reputations of you children tarnished because of me. You have all achieved so much. How many other women have raised such pious, noble, intelligent children on their own? And you, my little Johann, you have brought me such joy and pride.
Mother, no one survives torture without confessing. Don't worry about our reputations. You don't deserve such a death. If you were concerned about our social status in Leonberg, we will ask the court to grant us the favor of having you, in a small village where we were strangers. You don't have to face dying in the marktplatz in front of your neighbors.
Some people do die without confessing. Promise me that if I am condemned to torture, you have the person bringing my food to me bring the little green bottle I keep hidden at the back left corner of my pantry.
What are you saying?
If I am sentenced to torture, it is the only way I can end my life without torture or confessing. I will cheat these bastards out of my confession or my torture.
Mother, suicide is a mortal sin.
I think God would make an exception for me in this case. I have been more than a perfect servant.
Promise me you won't do anything until I plead your case again before the Duke. I will see him while I'm in Prague and send you word of what he says. I do so worry that you are too frail to survive here long and might perish before I return. Mother, in case God takes you before I return, I want to tell you now how much I love you and beg your forgiveness for anything I might ever have done to hurt you or make your life more difficult.
You know that is not necessary. You have only ever brought me joy.
I might have believed you before I had children of my own. Only now can I fully appreciate the sacrifices you made for us all. I have never known a woman as strong as you. Even now, you think of us, not of yourself.
I love you with my whole heart, but don't make me cry.
Your time is up. You have to leave before daylight so no one sees I let you inside.
Sorry. Thanks, Bernard.
The guard sits down in his chair
Madam.
in front of the prisoner. Katharina kneels and silently prays.
Madam, are you okay? Do you feel like continuing our conversation?
Why not? I can't sleep now.
May I ask how you came about being unjustly accused? Oh, surely there must have been something specific your neighbor used to prove you were a witch.
She falsely, and I said falsely, claims to have become ill after drinking a potion I gave her. I happen to know that the reason she almost died was because she self-aborted yet another pregnancy. Her illness was punishment from God for her chosen profession, and my potion did her no harm.
Are you positive the potion might not have had some small effect on her health? Perhaps she drank too much of it.
That claim was hogwash. It was the same remedy I had given many others before, including her. I am not the only person to treat her. I hear she also foolishly paid a traveling quack for his magic potion.
Oh, without offending you, madam, I hear there must be multiple, shall I say, victims before a person can be arrested. Surely she is not your only accuser.
You know that once accused of being a witch, the news spreads and all sorts of ruffians come forward with outrageous claims. Then there are simply the superstitious ones. If my free treatments cured them, they were happy. But if they failed, they assumed I must be a witch. Maybe not right then, but certainly after someone else accuses me of it.
I had never thought of it. But do you suppose that if God intended his plans to be used for good, it might make sense for the devil to use them for evil?
I know nothing of the devil, and I know no one who has willingly used God's gift of healing herbs for evil. Definitely, I did not.
Well, I believe you. So you say there were more accusers. Who were they? I only ask because I am fascinated with your story. Now, I have never had the opportunity of speaking to a person accused of witchcraft wrongfully in your case.
That surprises me. It seems like every midwife or woman over 50 years old has been accused these days. But yes, another was a young village girl who, after I was branded as a witch, said she fell ill and collapsed after passing by my window. I wasn't even home at the time.
Now, that is amazing. What would cause her to become ill so suddenly under your window?
I couldn't say at the time, but my son Johannes proved her wrong. He was just here. Did you see him? Anyway, he spoke to her and other witnesses and discovered that the little urchin was simply exhausted from carrying too much of a load of wood all day. Her fear and dull superstitious nature was to blame.
So then it is still only your neighbor who became ill. No one else became ill from your remedies?
Well, it was not from my herbs, but one friend claimed that he became lame and his wife died after they drank wine at my home. It can't be true because only she died, and we were all three drank the same wine. My wine is of the best quality in the area. It couldn't be to blame.
A winemaker. You are a lady of many talents. We would have made excellent business partners. Who was the lady that died? What happened?
Her husband was my son's professor, and he would often write letters I dictated to be sent to Johannes.
He wrote letters for you?
Yes. I am quite clever otherwise, if I may say, but was never schooled in reading. Anyway, one night after such a meeting, I brought out my best wine from the cellar, and we all drank. They both left in fine spirits, but after this accusation, he testified at court against me.
Oh, that sounds very serious. You must have been worried about that testimony against you.
I was very distraught when I heard she had died, but that was a year ago, and no one said my wine was to blame back then.
If we forget about this unfortunate incident and the young village urchin, the false accusation of your neighbor, then what else could the constable?
There is nothing of importance to mention. They're all lies.
Nothing more? I have read them all. There are over 30 accusations of illness and death against her. If she's innocent, why did she run away to Austria after being charged by the constable? Ask her that.
I was advised to seek safety away from the likes of you until my sons and counsel could put together my defense. I returned to clear my name, didn't I?
Over 30 charges? That is an impressive record. You must have a lot of enemies.
I have heard gossip that some neighbors didn't like me, but I have no enemies. These people came to me when they were ill. I was respected for my healing potions, but now they are all like wolves that catch the scent of blood.
I would be very ungrateful if I were poisoned. I noticed you forgot to mention the barber and the schoolmaster who became ill after drinking your potions.
You still assume I am guilty? Have you no compassion for prisoners falsely charged?
Innocent people are not arrested.
My dear lady, do not expect any prison warden to believe in your innocence. That would be too risky. One twinkling of sympathy could move them to allow a prisoner to escape.
Well, he could be at least civil and keep his revolting opinions to himself.
Oh, truly. And I have been victim to those myself for a while now. But to continue the story, I'll explain the deaths the warden mentioned to my friend. If he asked, that is, I am sure he would do so.
You think your friend can really help me?
He, like your son, is in a high position and can influence the courts if you are innocent. Maybe even if you are guilty. It wouldn't hurt to have two famous men pleading your case, would it? So please continue. How did these other customers of yours die?
I do admit that in time I realized that some villagers were becoming ill after drinking from one of my favorite goblets. It was a gift for my 60th birthday, you know. Anyway, I started suspecting it was from the goblet itself. It was a pity, and I wasn't really sure, but decided to quit using it just in case. It was such a beautifully ornate cup and added something special to the healing ceremony.
What made you think it was the cup and not your potion?
It had to be the cup, since I gave the same potion to them. It was obvious over time that only the people who drank the potion from this cup became ill.
Or died, unless you forget that your son Christoph is the only pewter maker in town.
May God rest their blessed souls if they become ill from one of Christoph's cups. Obviously, someone has not only bewitched my favorite goblet, but placed a curse on our whole family.
You are insane.
You are the one who believes in witches. If I say a witch cast a spell on me, then I am insane?
Listen, your own son Heinrich says you are crazy. You rode a calf to its death once and then roasted it for dinner.
My daughter testified that it was Heinrich himself that killed the calf. He was desperate to have meat with his meals. When it was discovered, I agreed to let him blame me so that he wouldn't be arrested.
Then was it not crazy when you asked that gravedigger to give you the skull of your father? He said you wanted to have your own son cover it in silver and use it as a drinking cup, as if you didn't do enough harm with your pewter goblet.
That was to be a gift to my son Johannes. I saw many such cups used, both in Prague and in his university in Tübingen. If you call this act of reverence for my beloved father insane, then you would be blaspheming the Catholic Church because they give out the bones of their saints as holy relics.
We are not Catholic here.
All right, then. The Duke's own mother, Sybil, used small pieces of skull and even of human hearts in potions sold in her pharmacy.
And we are not royalty here either, despite what you think of yourself. If your son, Heinrich, was so fond of you, then why was he himself the first to call you witch? He died a year later, didn't he? How suspicious is that?
Heinrich didn't mean it. He spent his life as a soldier, where he was always surrounded by rowdy and vulgar companions. He was simply angry that I criticized him for converting to Catholicism.
I think that vulgar companion was you. I've never seen a woman with such a wicked tongue.
Aunt, my family supports me. They will prove I am innocent.
Well, they didn't succeed in getting you released, did they, witch?
No.
If you are innocent, then why did you try to bribe Constable Einhorn with a silver cup to not report all of your witchy misdeeds to the Chancellery?
I will give you several reasons. I trust God must have given you some small ability to reason for yourself. You pick the one you like. One, the constable would happily have taken the bribe, but was afraid he would be discovered. Two, he wants to make a name for himself as having prosecuted the highest number of witches in the country, and I might add, his most famous to date. Or I'll throw in another reason. Maybe he is one of Ursula's admirers.
Or maybe he is simply a noble and honorable man.
Oh, you mean like the last constable who, when he died, left a chest full of silver and gold treasures?
Madam, I admire your courage in fighting to vindicate yourself against these incredulous charges. You have to ignore our jailer friend. Remember, we pay tax for him, our incarceration miserable. I am puzzled, though. How does it happen that you were so suddenly jailed tonight?
Unfortunately, tonight, I was tricked and intimidated into making a healing potion for Ursula. These drunken guards broke into the house, waking and terrorizing me with swords. They claimed I had given an evil potion to my neighbor Ursula and demanded I confess to being a witch. I knew to deny it. I saw this tactic used on my aunt, and once you confess, your fate is sealed.
Your aunt was a witch? You didn't mention that earlier.
Yes, no, I meant to say my aunt was accused. She raised me and was a saint, not a witch.
How did it come to happen that your aunt was charged?
She was
as
an
a witch?
herbalist, a good one. I was 12 when she was arrested. In the end, they tortured her into confessing to every death, failed crop, or illness for the last 50 years in the village. They said she even admitted to spending her nights robbing graves or flying through the air to attend Sabbaths, where she danced with other witches and spirits in the forest. She even admitted to having sex with the devil. They didn't care that I testified that she was in bed next to me all night, every night.
Your aunt confessed to having sex with the devil. Academic curiosity. But you say you slept next to her?
Yes, every night, all night.
Did you ever awake to discover the devil in your bed? I was so sorry for asking, but I have often heard stories of this in my esteemed circle of
It
friends.
was not true.
You say she confessed, so it must be true.
You
You were
say,
just protecting her.
you
Sorry.
say she confessed, so it must be true. You're just protecting her. You had to have heard strange sounds or a slight movement.
We slept with a bolster down the middle of the bed. My aunt said she would not even let a husband so close. This is probably what saved me from the inquisitors because, like you both, they assumed the devil had joined us in bed.
They found you innocent?
Yes, but it was after a long discussion about how many people could fit into the bed. They decided that there was not space for 4 of us at the same time, so I could not have also had a devil lover.
Their reasoning was very fortunate for you. A more intelligent inquisitor might have questioned whether the devil could have taken one lover at a time, or maybe both together. Are you sure you never heard strange sounds from her side of the bed? She did confess.
You're disgusting. I can't say, but I'm sure it was much less movement and noise than what comes from underneath your covers. The devil beds with men as well, you know.
I apologize for our warden's lack of respect. I will change the subject. I am quite curious about how witches are able to fly and what happens when they arrive in the forest. What did you hear of these?
I admit that at the age, the ability to fly was more interesting to me. My aunt didn't have any details, but I heard tell from the writings of a famous inquisitor. He said these women would dig up bodies of infants and boil up a brew from pulverized bones and fat. Next, they rubbed the fat onto their brooms. Then they flew on these 2 witch gatherings in the forest. He said witches who were too poor to afford animal fat had to walk.
Oh, that is really being poor. No wonder they would be tempted by the promises from the devil. But go on. What did they do there in the forest?
There, the young women danced in a circle with demons and other fairies. Then they ate black bread and presented the devil with the hearts of unbaptized children. Then the witches, instead of the kiss of peace in the Mass, had to kiss the devil's ass. After that, they engaged in all types of sex, while the old women held lit candles.
Tell Herr Mueller where the old hag witches held their candles. I'll give you a hint. They had to stand bent over. That would be you, madam.
You are truly vile. I swear you must have testicles for brains.
My dear lady, I agree with you there, but ignore him. Please continue. Tell me about these spirits and demons.
While I was working for that Jewish family after my aunt died. Well, anyway, it was there I once heard a rabbi say that God made all the strange spirits, nymphs, and fairies toward the end of the sixth day of creation. But before he could finish, he had to stop for the Sabbath. So now they hide in the woods, coming out to cause trouble and molest people.
And to attend these orgies with the devil and, shall we say, his mistresses?
Ignore the warden. Please continue. I do want to know what happened to your aunt.
Oh, poor dear. Barely alive after her torture, she was burned at the stake.
I am curious. If she was innocent, how did they manage to prove she was a witch?
They couldn't prove it. Witchcraft is impossible to prove because they do everything in secret without witnesses. That is why they have to use deceit or torture to get people to confess and to name other fellow witches.
Then she confessed.
Yes, they tricked her into first confessing to be a witch and then tortured her until she admitted all the other crimes.
Really? How did they trick her into confessing?
She was locked up in an old castle outside of town. Then one day the warden pretended to leave on a trip. He had a friend of my aunt visit her, promising to break her out of prison. The only condition was that first she had to confess to him. I don't know why she wasn't suspicious. Maybe it was because she was so desperate and thought he could be trusted. So to escape before the warden returned, she confessed to him. And then he betrayed her. For what reason, I never knew. Probably money.
No, so she confessed even though she was innocent? Oh, what a despicable trick orchestrated by despicable wardens.
Truly, betrayal and torture was her reward for trusting a friend and for healing our ungrateful villagers.
Well, if you didn't confess, how were they able to arrest you tonight?
They lied to me. These same men I saw at church every week and who professed to be Christians, they told me I had mixed a remedy to counteract the first potion that made Ursula ill. The matter would be forgotten. So hoping they were only trying to pacify her, I consented to mix a healing potion. I calculated that I might win either way. If she was healed, she would have no claim against me. If the potion didn't work, then she could not claim I had the power to make her ill.
What happened? Did she drink?
Yes, and to my shock, she claimed to be instantly and miraculously healed. I knew my herbs never worked that quickly, and that this gang's middle of the night intrusion was not going to end well for me.
And
I was then told that only a witch could cast a counterspell. That by healing her, it proved that I had harmed her with my first potion. Then these brave, honest Christian men with swords drawn crammed me into that box and brought me here to this shithole to await my inquisition.
You describe our lavish accommodations perfectly. I have to wonder, though, if neither your son nor my friend is successful in getting you released, would you be able to survive torture without confessing?
Survival is not important to me, only that I'm able to die without confessing.
The torture doesn't worry you? I have heard that almost everyone confesses under torture. They all prefer to confess so they can die and stop the pain. I have grown fond of you and only ask because of my genuine concern for your well-being.
I will never confess. A confession would bring dishonor and even suspicion of witchcraft onto my family. Johannes would lose his position as the chief mathematician, Christoph would lose his customers, and it could ruin my daughter's marriage since her husband is a respected pastor. The stigma would even affect my grandchildren's future.
I sincerely admire your devotion and courage. I've seen wood prints of some of the types of torture used and have to say I might confess to whatever they ask if one or two of these were used on me.
I have to have faith that it won't come to that.
I hear the interrogation and torture can take months. The interrogator and executioner have a fairly set regimen if the prisoner doesn't confess. Warden, what happens first? You would know.
Well, I have heard of some of the formalities. First, the woman is taken before the interrogator. The man determines the type of torture used by the executioner. Then the executioner strips her completely naked, and I mean completely. They say many of the old women confess right then.
Naked? Why?
They say that witches all have the signs of the devil on them. It might look like a small mole or a freckle and be difficult to find.
That is foolish. Everyone has a mole or a freckle.
Well, it is certain that all witches have them. Can I assume that you, Frau Kepler, have such a mark? Oh, does the cat have your tongue? Well, the executioner will soon find the answer.
Stop. We will never get her to confess by being so cruel.
What? You too, Herr Müller? You are in cahoots with the warden? I thought you were a friend. I am such an idiot.
I have had enough. You have failed miserably to get this witch to confess. You, Herr Müller, can forget the promise of a reprieve. Look here, witch. This is your honorable new friend, a drunken bench whistler. Maybe you can watch from a window when we parade him around the Marktplatz on the back of an ass.
Scoundrels, rats, pigs. No, you are both the bastard offspring of a rat and a pig.
Oh, you, madam, are the most wretched and foul-mouthed prisoner I have ever seen. You are most certainly the devil's favorite mistress.
If I were the devil's mistress, I would cast a spell to turn you both into the shit of a bastard pig rat. You will both burn in hell for this.
You will burn first. But before that, I will get to delight in watching the executioner loosen your irreverent tongue. I would have him cut it out now, but you will need it to confess. Sleep well.
God Almighty, please forgive me.
End of Act 1.
Hold on a second. Here we go. We're back.
I got nothing to hold on to. Act 2. Kepler, Bowden, and Duke. Thursday, September 10th, 1620. At Rise, Johannes Kepler and the Duke of Württemberg meet in a reception room at the Prague Castle. Jean Bodin joins them a few minutes later.
Your Grace, I am humbled and grateful to have an audience before you.
Herr Kepler, how often are two people from Leonberg and Prague at the same time? I prefer to meet you here because in Leonberg, protocol dictates that all our communication is done in writing. I would like to have a more open dialogue with you about more sensitive issues.
What would that be, Your Grace?
I will get to it. But first, let's discuss the letters I received regarding trial for your mother. I know you have familial obligations, but might I ask why you are so devoted to this cause? Your brother and sister have all but washed their hands of it. I hear the case against her is overwhelming and defending her may be futile and undoubtedly expensive.
My mother has assets, though not inexhaustible. As for our family, they are supportive but hindered by other factors. My sister's husband accepted a pastor position in a town too far away to care for her. My brother, quite frankly, has a weak constitution and worries his business and family will suffer if he's seen aiding her.
Are you aware that Constable Einhorn has now petitioned me to seize and disperse her assets to Ursula Reinbold? Without this, she would be unable to pay the expenses of her incarceration. These expenses would then fall upon you. Are you prepared to risk your reputation and livelihood defending her?
Doing the honorable thing shouldn't depend on cost or reputation for the victim of an injustice. And although our family doesn't typically show affection, I have a very strong attachment to her.
I understand. Us Germans are generally more stoic, at least in expressing love.
So true. I know others criticize her sharp tongue and propensity to meddle, but I also learned of the many sacrifices she has made for others while putting together her defense and speaking to her neighbors. She is most pious and attends church regularly and sincerely believes mixing herbal teas and potions are part of her Christian duty to cure the sick.
Well, Frau Reinbold seems to have more influence with the constable.
God only knows why. She is guilty of breaking every one of his commandments, the cause of which, I might add, led to all her professed ailments.
If this is your decision, I will continue to support you as best I can.
Your Grace, if you permit me to add, this Constable Einhorn has now ignored 3 of your orders to proceed with my mother's charge of slander against the Reinbolds. He is not only in connivance with them, but brags that if forced to obey your order to hold the trial, he will petition the royal court. It appears they have now delayed long enough that my mother will try as a witch before having the opportunity to clear her name in the slander trial.
Mm-hmm. This is disturbing news for both of us. Unfortunately, her case has proceeded too far now for me to stop it. I will deny the constable's request to seize and disperse her assets to the injured parties. However, her assets will have to have restrictions placed on them until after her trial.
We are in utmost gratitude to you, and God willing, she will live to exonerate her good name. Nothing else matters at the moment.
May God grant her continued health and endurance until then. I asked you here for another reason as well.
Yes.
I have for my counsel many wise and educated advisors. However, due to their deference and subservience, I suspect they do not always speak in a forthright manner. I hear, Herr Kepler, that lack of candor and humility are 2 of your virtues.
True, but none have expressed it as eloquently as you.
Then I will continue. As everyone under my reign knows, I pride myself on being a fair servant of God. My invitation is specifically related to your renowned skill as an astronomer. As a commander of troops, I am interested in knowing if you are truly able to predict outcomes of battles or to recommend military strategies.
This is not my expertise.
I believe it is. You are renowned for accurately predicting the 1610 peasant revolt, and I know you are engaged for this type of service for Count von Wallenstein.
I was not aware that the Count was my anonymous patron until just now.
Consider this. Consider this confidence as a token of my trust in our future collaborations. Now, not to offend you, but I must ask, how is it that your predictions are so superior to your colleagues? Is it by some degree of sorcery?
Are you now accusing me of witchcraft?
Oh, don't act shocked. You must know that without the protection of the king, you could be facing the same charges as your mother. I am not attempting to trick you into a confession. I am quite frankly seeking a little collaboration.
What is it you desire?
I want to know the secret or science, if you will, behind your military predictions. Many demonologists are now becoming suspect of astrologers and would have them burned as well. I should be safe from such accusations, but it may be risky for you if it were discovered.
No, as you wish then. You have done much for my family. First, understand that I do not believe astrologers are gifted with knowledge of the future. This power belongs only to our omniscient God. That is, I believe, the primary reason demonologists are now suspect of it as a form of sorcery. Interpreting the significance of the position of planets requires religious and mathematical training, such as I had at seminary.
Still, you are said to have a special gift for reading the stars.
So it is said, but I do use math formulas in preparing charts. Unlike others, I combine this ability with observation of human nature and current affairs to validate those predictions.
I hear you advised King Rudolph to take political action against the dissidents before Matthias deposed him.
True. The king knew he should take action, but ignored my prediction of an imminent takeover by his brother. Instead, he insisted on waiting for the stars to align themselves perfectly to guarantee his victory.
How unfortunate. I'm sure Rudolph would have overseen a more peaceful transition and collaboration between Catholics and Protestants.
I agree. The castle is not the same without him. But yes, these predictions are both examples of deductive reasoning and observation. It is here that I listen to nobles voicing concerns over various political issues, and since I frequently travel between Austria and Germany, I also hear complaints from villagers along the way.
You didn't see this predicted in the position of the planets?
You put me at great risk in answering that question. It would be blasphemy to say that God has not hidden his secrets in the stars.
Herr Kepler, you are either a great diplomat or a weasel. Tell me then, do you know enough from castle gossip to draft a chart predicting outcomes of my future battles?
If that is your wish.
Very well, that is settled. Aside from your expertise in astrology, I want to understand the scientific basis for sorcery itself, a subject that is of interest to us both at the moment. I am confident that you have done much research on this subject. Having lived with one accused of sorcery, you should prove knowledgeable, although I expect biased to a degree.
Sir, I must reiterate, my mother is not a sorcerer.
Herr Kepler, I cannot proclaim your mother's innocence or guilt, but I am not trying to trick you into a statement that could be used for her prosecution.
I appreciate your clarifying that.
My lands are under attack, and not only by foreign armies. They are being torn apart by dissension between Catholics, Lutherans, and Calvinists. Every village has people hysterically blaming crop failure or calamity upon a spell cast by a demon-possessed neighbor. My religious counselors simply condemn witchcraft or tell me to read the witch hammer, and my legal counsel quotes me judicial law. Both seem to lack courage or perhaps education in which to discuss the subject rationally. I want the truth.
Lately, courage has been pressed upon me like a branding iron. I am honored if my torment might in some way serve a higher purpose.
You may have that courage tested now, because to be fair, I have also invited the renowned philosopher and demonologist Jean Baudin to join us.
I am aware of Baudin. He served at one time with King Charles IX's council and is a professor of law at Toulouse. He is also responsible for the increased use of torture for any and all accused of witchcraft.
I assume you would know of him. Aside from your conflicting views on sorcery, you have much in common. Stefan, please ask Professor Baudin to join us.
Your Grace.
Monsieur Jean Baudin, might I present to you Professor Johannes Kepler, our king's chief mathematician.
To be sure, I know of you. I believe we share a fascination of religious philosophy and physics.
Please, sit down.
I notice there are two new imposing statues of the castle entry since my last visit. When did those appear?
Right after Rudolph II's brother, King Matthias, overthrew him.
They are quite malevolent and certainly don't make a visitor feel welcome.
Well, not all visitors are equally welcome right now. I dare say you, as a Catholic, are more welcome than me.
True. And with God's grace, I will be welcomed everywhere one day.
I would be satisfied if all forms of Christianity would capture the hearts of the world and live in peace.
That would be a fine start. Getting on then, I must say I was curious to finally meet you. You have my condolences on the passing of your father.
Thank you. It is kind of you to say.
I almost met him once. It was Queen Elizabeth's court, where he was conferred to the Order of the Knights of the Garter. Shakespeare created a play in his honor. It was a quite amusing tale about a couple of wives from Windsor.
It is a pity he wasn't able to attend the affair.
The story is your father's horse was stolen along the way.
I see that joke is still circulating around England. My father was good-humored about it. He said it was more likely the horse carrying Her Majesty's emissary with his invitation that was stolen.
A hearty laugh does me good right now.
Yes, I imagine you don't experience much of it in your campaign against witchcraft.
No, there is not. I suppose we must focus on my purpose here, as unpleasant as it is. Professor Kepler, your academic and religious credentials are impressive. I must say, I find some of your writings most interesting, like the theory that our sun rotates on its axis. I assume you are aware you could be charged with heresy for some of these beliefs. Your support of Copernicus's law of the universe broach upon heresy.
Are you here to interrogate me about this?
No, this is of no concern to me at the moment.
May I ask why you are here?
I assume, rather, I am here to investigate your intimate connection to sorcery.
I must correct any misunderstanding you may have, Monsieur Bourdin. Herr Kepler is not on trial here.
I beg your pardon. I mistakenly assumed that since most of those serving during the previous court was suspect of sorcery, that he would have been charged.
And what do you profess to know of this?
I know your king, Rodolphe, known abroad as the Mad Alchemist, ceremoniously drew a circle around himself with the horn of a unicorn for protection. This sorcery cost him his throne.
At the risk of offending the validity of your information, King Rudolph lost his throne due to religious tolerance. He was a great king that endured more than most. He reigned through the Great Plague, the Vienna earthquake, and the Turkish invasion. Anyone would go a little mad. He was not a devil worshipper.
You do know that the king can never be brought to trial for sorcery. He is only posed. Obviously, that is what the Vatican supported his brother Matthias in doing.
I disagree. The Vatican was more concerned with Rudolph's tolerance of Protestants, which came to outnumber Catholics 10-1 here.
Rudolph was a weak king and let other religions spread too far before ending it. My strategy and that of other political religious elites is to peacefully bring all religions into one accord under one sovereign ruler.
King Rudolph kept the peace in the land despite Catholics being a minority. He was an opponent of violence. He saw too much of it in his uncle Philip's courting with the Turks. Are you instead advocating that he should have started a civil war in an otherwise peaceful empire?
If unification cannot be done peacefully, so be it. Your beloved Rudolph was obviously incapable of that unification.
The king was capable. He just waited too long before acting.
Well, your King Rudolph was not so peace-loving that when he brought in a mercenary army at the end.
It was too late, and it was not a war to protest against Protestant citizens. It was to protect himself from his brother's military coup.
Rudolph's mercenaries failed to protect him, and neither did his magical unicorn horn. And if he loved his subjects so much, he would have paid mercenaries instead of letting them stay around pilfering and creating havoc on his citizens.
Those were horrendous times, especially for our women. Regardless, King Rudolph did care about his subjects. I suspect that was unable to pay them since King Matthias had him under house arrest.
Did the mercenaries finally leave without payment?
No, the citizens of Prague were finally saved when the Rosenberg family used the last of their fortune to pay them the wages a king could not.
I hear the king owed you back wages as well. Money you would find handy in your mother's court case. You may find yourself bankrupt just like the Rosenbergs, and for a much less noble cause.
What do you know of my mother's case?
I was invited to be her inquisitor.
I have no authority in who is selected as inquisitor. I merely thought the two of you should have an opportunity to meet before her trial.
And you accepted?
I think due to the celebrity of the case, I should give it serious consideration.
Gentlemen, shall we now focus on my purpose for our meeting? Monsieur Baudin, I wish you to prove to me that witchcraft is real and propagated by the devil. Herr Kepler, you are to dispute him.
That should be simple. Shall I begin?
There are specific questions I want addressed. They are, do witches have any real power? If so, what are they? Is there a way to reduce the number of witch burnings? Or do I even want to contain these executions, as many of the condemned are a burden to our society? Are we truly in the last days of judgment? If so, is this the devil's ploy to create havoc before the end?
I will gladly give you a long list of monstrous acts perpetrated by witches.
In a minute, please. As Duke of my lands, I do risk divine judgment for interfering with the holy war between God and the devil. What divine retribution do I face for the inadvertent execution of an innocent? Is it wiser to execute innocence than to let a devil worshiper live?
I respect and am humbled by your courage, sire. This is a dilemma. Most would prefer to remain neutral. If you permit, may I state my case first? If I can prove there is no foundation for such widespread accusation of witches causing chaos and harm to others, you would have the answer to all your questions.
Carry on, then. You have me intrigued.
I see the catalyst for this hysteria as the result of natural disasters occurring right after our victory over the Turks. Most starving and battle-worn Christians now redirect the religious hate and fear they had against Muslims toward each other.
This battle against infidels was necessary, the necessary start of a larger cleansing and unification.
Monsieur, at a time when the world needs tolerance between Christians, your path to unification is simply the choice of conversion, exile, or death. You have unnecessarily fueled the flame under the pot of hate and fear. This did not and will not produce universal Catholicism. It has, for now, only created a foolish scapegoat, namely sorcerers and witches.
I think you take this too personally. If you had converted, you could have remained in Graz and kept your professorship. What does all this have to do with disproving sorcery?
Since our clerics are now unable to provide a safe haven from invading armies and starvations, they have entered a campaign to save their souls. They do this through stricter adherence to morals, church attendance, prayers, and the use of blessings.
I don't get your point.
Our kingdom has had a long history of using pagan charms for protection. The belief in blessings and charms naturally comes from a belief in curses. Previously, our clergy were unable to claim these disasters were due to our lack of faith or church attendance, but now, because of this increased piousness of parishioners, God could no longer be blamed. It must be his enemy, the devil, and his allies.
Pardon me, we Catholics do not use magical charms.
On the contrary, you use crosses for protection, right? Church candles and holy water, not to mention bones of saints in your worship.
Those are merely visual reminders of our God and saints. Most of our parishioners are illiterate and need these images as an aid in their worship.
I may understand this as an educator. However, I know that when these same good-intentioned worshippers steal or duplicate a holy object and use it at home for protection against evil, they are accused of sorcery.
Surely, as trained clerics, you must agree that if these, what you call charms, have power, they should only be entrusted to priests who use them reverently.
As a trained politician and philosopher, you can agree it might also be a church conspiracy to keep parishioners reliant on their institutions. Why would a blessing or object be holy in one location, not the other, the worshiper being the same?
You know that long-sealed traditions are difficult to change. The Catholic Church has done much to stamp out dependence on pagan superstitions. Idols and blessings are not our enemy. It is their misuse by agents of the devil. We are unfortunately only seeing a backlash because of current world catastrophes. It is not some church conspiracy, as you claim.
I am not concerned with a church conspiracy. I am saying that if clerics put less emphasis on blaming the devil for natural disorders, it would calm people's fears.
I can still prove that witchcraft is the real danger to us all, particularly now.
If you please, Monsieur Bowden, I still have the floor, and at your pleasure shall continue my argument.
Proceed. Don't let me interrupt your exhilarating monologue.
Catholicism has had over 1,500 years to eradicate these superstitions and has failed. It was finally with the passing of the Carolina Charter that we were able to guarantee a fair trial to those falsely accused. But you, Monsieur Baudin, with the advent of your anti-sorcery campaign and publication of Demonone, have revived this hysteria. The number of innocents being tortured and executed as witches has grown exponentially. Some villages have been wiped out completely.
My book provided the tools and knowledge needed by magistrate judges who were entrusted to keep our communities free from harmful sorcery.
All you did was give them permission to ignore this code of imperial law. Now inquisitors almost always prescribe some sort of torture to force a confession.
Oh, what real difference would that possibly make in the proceedings of witch trials?
The magistrates now accept unsubstantiated rumors by feuding neighbors. New mothers shift blame for an abortion or miscarriage onto their midwife. People accused of murder are burned as witches, while the person claimed to have been murdered is alive and well.
The Bible says that if one sins in their heart, it is as if they have sinned in the... It matters not whether the person the witch wished dead is still alive.
Then don't you consider it at least a little coincidental that all confessions are done after a period of horrendous torture?
You honestly believe that a witch would confess otherwise? The true faith must be kept pure. We are fighting a new holy crusade here. Wars are like a caring doctor who cannot heal a deep-seated disease without causing great pain or provoking much mourning from the patient. If a few innocents have to die, so be it. They can take solace in knowing that with the public display of their execution, they have discouraged others from being seduced by the devil.
Surely you don't believe that God would want his innocents to suffer a more brutal death than his own son suffered for our sins? And not by the hands of Romans, pagans, or Jews, but by their own fellow Christians?
God allowed innocent Christians to be persecuted and even butchered in the Roman Colosseum. Those guilty will answer to God later. It is not for me to judge.
You must jest. What if that unwitting guilty accomplice is our duke here, or our princes, or even our king? Are you personally willing to risk the damnation of their souls?
Obviously, the magistrates need more supervision. I have been distracted with my armies and have trusted them to be honorable in their duties. I fear that until these wars end, we may all have to answer directly to God for any misdeeds.
Then, religion aside, there is also a financial basis for many of these false accusations. This, you as Duke, might be able to change.
How so?
The jailer and executioners now profit greatly. They not only charge for the rope that is used to hang the victim, but the large banquet celebrating their execution. You and other nobles even provide an additional payment to those involved in the successful conviction of a witch. This financial reward could simply be reduced.
We have to cover our expenses. We cannot be expected to do this work free of charge.
I will discuss both your concerns with my counsel.
The other financial basis for these charges lie with the accusers. It has become common that a farmer nowadays, without proof, can blame a neighbor for a failed crop, death of a diseased animal, or for any other misfortune. Then they demand to receive financial compensation from the estate of the accused witch.
I understand the distress of farmers when a failed crop or a dead milk cow can mean his family starves. He has a duty to seek out a cause and, if discovered, claim restitution.
As well he should. However, causing the death of a neighbor's livestock or dealing others injury has always had its own legal punishment. Assuming the accusation is true, the guilty party, instead of being brought to justice for his misdeed, is now accused of a much more sensational crime, namely witchcraft, which mandates execution.
Absurd. My book lists specific criteria must be met to suspect one of a witchcraft. A common thief or murderer does not qualify.
Of course not. My point exactly. But it is at this stage hysterical city elders, influenced by your writings and without legal restrictions, apply torture to force confessions. And as I pointed out, a conviction of witchcraft offers an additional bounty.
Torture has always been used to obtain the truth. Criminals don't confess on their own.
Did we not learn this lesson from our history? Remember that outrageous confessions were obtained this way from gypsies and Jews in the past. Torture caused these unfortunate people to confess to crimes in areas of the country where they had never traveled. They confessed to ritual killings of children they never met, cannibalizing them and drinking their blood. I dare wonder if the reason we are turning against each other right now is because we have either massacred or expelled both those helpless groups from our cities.
Perhaps it is because of these are rituals of the devil, always requires of his worshippers. This should prove beyond a doubt that they are of satanic origin.
You often quote Aristotle and Moses in your writings, but why do you ignore Greek mythology?
What are you implying?
It is obvious that people saw these sacrilegious rituals on our own woodcuts, not the new ones we see of modern witches, but earlier ones betraying the ancient gods of agriculture.
To which woodcuts do you refer?
The one showing the god Kronos as a terrifying figure who consumes his own offspring. I say that it is from this visual production of history that those tortured souls draw upon. If the accused fails to make this connection, then their executioner directs their confession to what he has seen in this art. And I must say, not only from these woodcuts, but from details in your book.
Unlike you, I am not convinced of their innocence.
Not even now. when this hysteria is so rampant that confessions of these same acts are being forced from priests and nuns. I hear even those enlightened Jesuits who dare condemn the legal procedures used in witch trials as unjust.
Nothing is impossible, and no one immune from the devil's devices. A Jesuit is quite a trophy for the devil. Besides, lest you forget, the very definition of a witch is someone capable of great feats that to us seem extraordinary or impossible. I can cite the many spells of witches that Homer endured and recorded in his Odyssey, like with Circe the sorceress, turned Homer's men into swine.
And there you have it. People quote Homer's Odyssey as though it was written by the hand of God, that every spectacular tale was factual and not embellished by an over-exuberant and suspicious pagan writer.
Homer's Odyssey is a true account of his travels. Everyone knows that.
I am merely saying that now in our modern times, most intellectuals view Circe's statement, or curse if you insist, quite differently. She only meant that the manners of Homer's sailors compared to Circe's were brutish, even resembling that of swine.
Well, monsieur, even if you could possibly discredit some of Homer's tales, you have to acknowledge that the Bible also speaks of the powers held by witches.
I am not disputing that witches exist, rather that the numbers are exaggerated and that their rights to a fair trial are subverted. I agree with my dear departed friend Dr. Godelman, who said witches are mostly deluded and depressed women in need of medical treatment. If it is true that they enter a pact with the devil, it is from fear and intimidation and not as equal partners.
Was the doctor claiming that these witches are to be pardoned?
No, he recommended that they not be subjected to punishment by a secular court. It is the responsibility of clerics to bring these bewitched souls back to God.
Catholics, unlike the Protestants, have such provisions.
True, but you yourself are not known for advocating it.
Exorcisms and prayer are not expedient enough to stop witches from infecting others with this spiritual plague. That is probably how some of our good-intentioned priests got exposed to the devil in the first place.
I see. Your renowned attribute for compassion lies elsewhere. Then let's return to our inspection into the validity of some of the more outrageous claims against witches. The accusation which should certainly instantly discredit a witness using it. Let us consider auguries. Does the devil really speak to witches?
This is one of the first miracles that proves proof of a witch's conversion to devil worship, since it is through animals or objects that he communicates to his victims. Homer's Odyssey confirms this, and it is how the devil first spoke to Eve.
True. And the first time was, as you state, through the serpent to Eve. But the devil only did so twice more, namely to Job and to Jesus. I ask you, why do you think, after only speaking to humans 3 times in 6,000 years, the devil suddenly appears and speaks to thousands of Christians of both Catholic and Protestant faiths?
Do you claim to know that Satan is not behind the recent epidemics and wars? Do you prefer to think that normal, God-fearing people are themselves responsible for all this devastation? Surely, instead, we are at the brink of the prophesied last battle between good and evil, Satan and God.
I cannot refute this prophecy. I can only argue that Christianity has not been yet offered to all the peoples of the world. This has to be done in order to allow their salvation prior to that final judgment.
Well, as disheartening as it is, Kepler has a point. I see my people are frightened and acting like caged rats that turn their murderous rage upon each other. I feel helpless in being able to stop it. The devil has put so many obstacles in my path.
True, we are now seeing Otherwise, respectable Christians wielding the sword of vengeance against their neighbors over petty arguments with a simple accusation of witchcraft.
There is an increasing number of clergy who believe astrology to be a fortune-telling augury. You could be at risk yourself.
You compare the interpretation of the beauty and order of God's heavens with illiterate old hags that falsely claim to predict one's future. Are you deviously attempting to distract me from my line of reasoning?
I agree with you on the beauty and order of God's heavens.
Monsieur Badan, I concede to personally respect your reputation as a compassionate humanist. Yet I cannot reconcile how, at the same time, you show no compassion for people suspect of witchcraft. The victims are almost always harmless women, some say as many as 20 to 1. In our own Leonberg, they were all women.
It is simple. Men can only destroy each other's physical body, which poisons and condemns our eternal souls to a torturous fire less than any of these accused witches have to endure. Besides, it was Eve, a woman that brought sin into the world.
It was a man who committed the first murder of his own brother.
It was still a woman who was responsible. Why do you defend them? Did you not read Boethius' Consolation of Philosophy in Seminary? He said, woman is a temple built upon a sewer. And he is not alone in his condemnation. The 10th century Odo of Cluny stated, to embrace a woman is to embrace a sack of manure.
I would have to say you provide a good argument for supporting the celibacy of priests.
I know you have a wife and mother. I ask you then, if one or the other was charged with witchcraft, would you defend her?
If either were guilty, I say to you that I would gladly see them suffer their fate.
Then I say to you, if my mother doesn't survive your inquisition, you may find me a formidable witness the next time you are accused of witchcraft.
Gentlemen, please. I was warned that you both possess razor-sharp tongues. I had no idea you would engage in such deadly verbal duel. Perhaps we should return to my original agenda.
My apologies. I am known for having a quick and passionate temperament.
Quite understandable, especially now. And on this subject, please continue.
Very well. Let's address another feat you claim to be parcel of the satanic power endowed upon witches, namely transformations.
Is this something like the clay creature that the Jews here in Prague believe comes to life to defend them against pogroms?
Perhaps, but in reverse order. The Jews put their salvation into the hands of a clay figure that transformed into a living guardian called the golem. Christians and demonologists, such as our friend here, believe that witches transform themselves into animals or other objects to harm others, and that demons can transform into men. Both these misguided belief leads to injustices by our courts.
Well, have either of you ever seen witches change form? I've only heard it is possible.
Monsieur,
Yeah, monsieur, oh, I'm sorry.
Monsieur, do you care to respond? You are the only person here who claims to have interacted with witches, hundreds in fact.
Well, I have not seen it myself, but it is a common phenomenon documented by the jailers.
So there you have it. Without personal knowledge to prove transformation is possible. Professor Bowden appeared as an expert before Pope Leo VII in this matter. He then somehow deceived the Pope into believing it possible.
Deceive indeed. Our esteemed Pope agreed with me and proclaimed the transformation by witches as factual.
Yes, and it is now used throughout Europe to support the excessive use of chains and bondage for the accused. Duke Frederick, are you familiar with the incident Bowden presented as proof?
I am not.
I know to what you are referring. It was every December in Livonia. that a certain Captain Witch gathered all the witches in the country together. Then he led many millions of them through a great pool of water where they instantly transformed into wolves and began attacking and devouring people. This is proof of how dangerous and quickly devil worship can spread, if not immediately and voraciously contained.
Incredible. You say millions of witches devoured everyone in their path?
Or perhaps not so credible. I have researched this fantastic tale. Do you know the population of the whole Ottoman Empire then? No. It was around 11 million. And after Monsieur Bowden says many millions were killed, the census 20 years later shows a 30% increase in the population.
The Pope did not think it an exaggeration. He believed it without hesitation.
Or research. Perhaps the Pope was a bit biased against Livonia since the region had broken from Catholic rule in favor of Lutheranism. However, back to transformations. Monsieur Bowden continued this type of absurdity with the story of a Jew who can, when he wished, turn himself into a wolf and escape from a whole army of men. Don't you find this marvelous that the learned men of the church believe this fairy tale?
It is much more marvelous that men will not believe it. Everyone knows that it is natural for wolves to devour their prey, and so do these magical wolves. God said to the people of Israel, if you observe not my commandments, I will send among you the beasts of the field, which shall devour both you and your cattle. Herr Kepler, you are bordering upon blasphemy.
Blasphemy! Would not God have avoided much confusion and misunderstanding if he had clearly said, I will send witches in the likeness of beasts, instead of simply beasts of the field?
Now you dare rewrite God's own chosen words? Believe as you wish, then, but let the Pope agreed with me and proclaimed transformation as possible.
Remind me again, why is such an important issue in witchcraft trials?
Personally, is because one of the absurd accusations against my mother claimed she had changed into a cat. That aside, this misconception is detrimental because it results in helpless old women and children being kept in chains and watched 24 hours a day in order to prevent them from transforming into mice or other such creatures and escaping.
How could shackles made for a human prevent a mouse from escaping?
Exactly. I would expect this adherence to papal authority from Catholics, but this folly has taken hold among our fellow Protestants as well. This belief is also responsible for the additional humiliation against those accused.
You are concerned about the humiliation of witches?
Well, Herr Kepler, this should prove interesting. Please explain.
It is the belief that the devil can change into human form, not only speak to his victims, but to engage in sex to consummate their union.
Sex with demons was documented in Genesis 6 that says, when angels saw that the daughters of men were fair, they took the form of men and married women. And then, as we all know, God sent a flood to destroy this evil.
Well, this renewed accusation, true or not, has also led to, if I may speak so boldly, the examination of the accused's genitals.
What? I had no idea. Why?
It is due to the assumption that any irregularity or chafing is indicative of sex with the devil. As if these procedures were not humiliating enough, the executioner often ridicules and mocks his victims while shaving their privates.
A woman who engages in all sorts of perversions with a demon shouldn't complain about being merely shaven and examined. You, monsieur, were not paying seminary classes.
I cannot refute scripture, but I truly suspect that when physical evidence of sex is found on a victim in our time, you need to look no further than the jailer on duty.
You blasphemy, because you appear to not believe in demon spirits at all. Instead, you accuse our honest and God-fearing guards. They often discover these women who are alone in their cells, engaging in rapturous sex.
I think the operative words here are alone in their cell, and even if truly alone in their cell, not with a jailer, perhaps the moans of tortured women are from painful wounds, cold, or hunger. It is the perverted venery of her jailer that falsely attributes these moans to a sinful origin. Or perhaps women are simply engaging in the same self-pleasure common among male prisoners.
Very well, then. We appear not to have a consensus on the subject. Shall we address the question of why would so many people be tempted to ally with the devil when such ill fates await them?
Exactly. Any sensible person would say to the devil, why should I commit myself to you when you will deceive me? Did you not promise my neighbor to save and rescue her, and yet she is burned at the stake? Do these women gain riches? No. It is therefore illogical that anyone would willingly enter into such a contract with the devil.
This is only proof of the power of seduction the devil has over these women. Despite the horrors that await them, they succumb to him and to the intoxicating power over others he promises. This is why the Lord moved me to write demonomony as a warning to people to help identify those already possessed.
It is certainly well distributed throughout all Europe. You must find great satisfaction in this.
I will be satisfied when the last witch is burned and God wins this final battle.
With you as his valiant captain?
Or mercenary.
I see neither of you ally yourselves with my noble crusade. Don't deceive yourselves of your own invulnerability during this holy purge. I have already exposed your King Rudolph's dalliances into alchemy. I might also mention, I know your father was a patron of alchemists and fortune-telling astrologers. It is also suspected that the pharmacy your mother established for the poor was a facade for alchemy.
We have no alchemists now. What is your point?
Your parents are both fortunate that they passed away before King Matthias sent all these magic practicing alchemists into exile. I am, out of liking of you both, merely pointing out possible blemishes to your otherwise pious reputation. It is only a matter of time before your new Catholic king gains complete control of his empire.
I doubt an old alchemist's lab would endanger my noble standing. I am not an enemy of Catholicism. It is tolerated in my territories.
I would encourage you to make a better demonstration of your approval with our faith. It was not only alchemy that tarnishes your family, it was the outward display of a hatred towards us by your Lutheran father.
What are you referring?
It is a common knowledge, even by those to whom I spoke at the Vatican, that your father commissioned a spectacular anti-Catholic firework celebration in Stuttgart. That is, in the likeness of Jesuits being torched at the stake.
Monsieur, you then, better than anyone else, can appreciate my fairness and neutrality in inviting you into my private chambers for this discussion.
Monsieur Kepler, at this point, I might mention my concern over your future under an inevitable Catholic rule. We all know you wrote of your mother consulting a demon to gain the secret of travel to the moon in your manuscript on interplanetary travel.
I knew you would use this to condemn my mother, and now me.
I do only with concern for your safety.
Yes, regrettably, it was the method I used in an essay at university to explain space travel. The magical method of travel was simply an allegory to show what our solar system looked like if an astronomer viewed the Earth from space. How else could I explain a person able to stand on the moon? I regret I didn't simply have the astronomer fly to the moon on the back of an old cow.
Perhaps, but that is only one of the many accusations that could be used against you, if permitted, that is.
I would not be so hasty to condemn others. You, not me, had your home search for evidence of witchcraft, which I suspect was found. It was your witchcraft book that was put on the Vatican's index of prohibited books.
Your books are also on the list.
Mine were banned for supporting Copernicus and his theory that the Earth revolves around the sun. Your books were banned because of your extensive knowledge of sorcery. You even sanctioned the use of remedies to protect against charms and incantations. In essence, you recommended sorcery to counteract sorcery.
I was not convicted.
That only proves you had close friends in the church and the courts. I question why you are now in Bohemia. It is because of the Spanish Inquisition's new leniency for those charged as witches? Are there no longer enough witches in the West to satisfy your needs?
I am here at the current epicenter of sorcery to lend my expertise in stamping out this demonic epidemic. The princes in Germany are most passionate about wiping out all witchcraft.
Not every passion comes from virtue. And lately this passion appears to be built on shaky foundation of reports from self-promoting or unscrupulous judges. I hear you yourself generally earn 5 gold coins per execution.
If you want to call into question my character, I, unlike you, was never excommunicated.
You deserved it much more than I. You are a known, irremissible critic of Catholicism.
Not of the true church, only of the clergy's religious practices. Unlike some, I am a true believer and have a pure spirit. Perhaps you are more disliked by your contemporaries, or simply you chose the wrong faith. I admit you are a most formidable foe. I am told you would make a good Catholic. I know you have been approached by some very prominent clerics.
Perhaps I'm a fool not to consider conversion. I do admit I find spiritual fellowship with rational Jesuits like Friars and Spee.
Obviously, there are more moderate Catholics than myself, those tolerant of religious dissension and devil worshippers.
I am sure that both of us support your campaign against true witches and would find peace in the knowledge that they would all be eradicated.
For now, you can rest assured that there are no witches in my family. Regardless, I thank you for your invitation to convert. But I was born Lutheran, and if I must, I will die as an excommunicated Lutheran.
I think you will both agree that despite our differences, there is one thing on which we will all agree. While all men are created in the likeness of God, unfortunately, we still have our suspicions about each other.
With that agreement, I will reluctantly, shall I say, lay down my saber.
I shall do the same and graciously ask if you do so in surrender or in victory.
End of Act 2. Katharina's Inquisition, Friday, September 28th, 1620. At Rise, Bowden, an executioner, enter and stop just inside the prison door.
It is Baudin. So, we finally meet. I hear you are notorious for getting confessions from your prisoners. If you succeed with this one, we could have a most profitable future partnership.
I would be honored and will not disappoint you. I will use one of your favorite tricks today. I will get her now. Her name is Andrea Farber.
Very good. I understand completely. I will prepare this Kepler woman for her inquisition. Warden, I am here to interrogate your prisoner, Katharina Kepler.
Welcome, sire.
You may bring her out of her cell and put her in one of these chairs for me to question.
My pleasure.
Are you Katharina Kepler? Warden, is this Katharina Kepler? Why doesn't she answer?
She is, sire, and I am sure she will speak up very soon. I would personally recommend that you have her tongue cut out before that. She's been casting horrid spells on me and the other prisoners.
An intriguing request that I may regret not taking your advice, but there is a legal process to which I must adhere.
Yes, sire.
Madam, I am here with the executioner at the order of the Stuttgart Chief Judge. On August 18, 1620, you, Katharina Kepler, were indicted on the charge of witchcraft. You, the accused, will once more and in all seriousness, with warning of the executioners to be examined, to terito verbalis, to save yourself this, shall we say, unpleasant experience. Do you wish to confess now? I assume you were counseled that silence qualifies as a new evidence of sorcery.
How can that be?
The devil is said to hold a witch's tongue to prevent her from confessing. It is therefore a proof of an alliance with the devil. So, if you don't answer all my questions, I can have the judge permit me to use torture. A confession now would save the court's time.
I am facing an unjust and horrific death. Why do I care about the court's time?
Simply because the court's time is expensive. You are old and will die soon, regardless. Do you really want to waste your remaining assets on a trial? Wouldn't you prefer to leave your estate to your children?
I spent 76 years in service to God and community. I, without assistance, ran a family business and raised 4 children to be God-fearing and prominent members of society. Now, you say my only value as an old woman is in my assets? Need I say more?
Warden, has this prisoner confessed to witchcraft, magic while in your custody?
She has not.
Madame Kepler, if you will not confess, the court has sentenced you to terito verbalis. It is only due to your eldest son's influence with the royal court that you do not suffer torture yourself. Do you understand this process?
I understand.
I am ordered to read the charges against you and have the executioner demonstrate the instruments of torture that can be used on you. If I find additional cause to believe you are guilty, you will have a new prisoner in the next cell. It is a woman, a Madame Farber. She has been sentenced to torture until she confesses her crimes and names her accomplices.
I don't know her. What did she do?
She is a witch. You may find it interesting to know that she too has a famous relative, a husband, in fact. Bear in mind that the charges against Madame Faber are not as well documented or as severe as yours. I suggest you not feel so smug. You are still at risk of being convicted. The court requests that you watch as these instruments are applied to her, but since that is only a request, and I am a benevolent and religious man, I will not force it on you. I have overseen hundreds of witches suffering torture and can tell you that they all confess in the end. For both of your sakes, spare yourself from witnessing this sickening demonstration, one that will only lead to you confessing anyway. I would sincerely advise you to confess now.
I will not confess.
Very well, we will proceed. Executioner, please bring in Frau Faber and prepare her. I think we need to read some.
Andrea?
I think we need to read some stage directions.
Okay, there we go. Executioner enters leading prostitute and stops before entering jail cell next to Katerina to whisper to prostitute lady. Andrea, remember to scream like you're in pain. The witch has to be so frightened that she will confess. For this, you will be paid more handsomely than when you pretend to scream with pleasure.
Don't worry. Just you remember to only pretend to torture me.
Executioner sits prostitute in a chair inside the empty cell. Keep the women's backs to each other.
Fire both in. I have prepared Frau Faber for you.
Executioner, do you have your instruments? Warden, are you ready to transcribe our interview and confession?
Yes, I am ready, sire.
I do, sire.
Are you aware, madam, that the law states that no person shall harm another in body or health in any way and is forbidden under pain of punishment? That is also true that a person who inflicts pain upon another person is responsible and liable for all loss.
I understand too well. The court doesn't care about the greater pain inflicted on me with this false charge.
I shall continue then. The first charge against you reads, is it true that you, against the above laws, not only took hold of Ursula Reinbold, but also caused a harm? Second, is it true that you in 1613 invited the same woman into your home and gave her a potion? Third, that a few footsteps later she fell ill and to this date endures unspeakable pain.
I admit to having her in my home and trying to help her. I did not cause harm to her.
True that the same Ursula Reinbold has tried numerous proper remedies at substantial cost to her, but nothing would help.
Then why should my remedy be expected to help?
True that you confessed to the magistrate that you gave such poison to the accuser.
I admitted to giving her a potion to help her with pain. I never admitted to poisoning her. That is a lie. I never said it. How could that be in the court papers? Someone has changed the scribe's records.
Let's continue. True that you hit a girl when you caught her in the unjust act of giving a drink to the glazier's wife and caused extreme pain in her arm and paralysis in her finger until today.
I remember quite well. I did not try to hit her. I merely waved my arm to tell her to stop meddling. If she was hit, it was her fault. And by the way, that is something her parents should have done long ago. If you act like a cow, you get treated like one. Besides, she comes from a family of convicted thieves. They are trying to scam me, or else they were paid to bring this false charge against me now.
I see getting you to admit your sins will take more persuasion. Let me introduce you to your executioner.
I am delighted to make your acquaintance.
I will do my best to not to disappoint you, my dear lady.
Executioner, you may proceed with the interrogation of Madame Farber. Show them both your first tool.
Ladies, you will both find this interesting. Before the physical permission begins, I always bathe the accused to remove any dirt or smudges. Then I shave off the hair in order to examine her for spots. This is how the devil marks his mistresses. Well, honestly, I only shave the young lookers. Yes, madam, I would just quickly singe your hair off with my torch. Are you sure you don't want to watch? You will see I am quite talented. It is a pity you choose to miss my performance.
Frau Farber, are you prepared to confess now?
No muting. No, sire.
Executioner, you may proceed.
Oh, no, please. What are you doing? I'm a modest lady and a devout Christian.
Hold still, or you risk being cut. Turn around, raise your arms.
No, please, don't do this. Be careful with that razor.
Sound more like you mean it then.
No, please. I'm a married woman with children.
Have you found any marks of the devil?
You may record that I have found the first diabolical mark hidden in her armpit, the second behind her knee.
So recorded.
So recorded.
Now, are you ready to confess to witchcraft, Madame Farber?
For God's sakes, I'm innocent. Those are not marks of the devil. They are moles, and everyone has them.
Unfortunately, you have the diabolic mark of the devil, and we must continue with your interrogation, unless you want to confess now.
No.
Please proceed with the standard test for areas of numbness.
I begin with this needle. You see it is long and sharp. A witch has areas of numbness on her body where the devil protects her from suffering pain. I will now prick your body, sure, I mean her body, to see if she has any of these spots. I will start with her breasts.
Disgusting degenerate.
Let me know if you feel anything here.
No, you wouldn't.
Oh, and here, and here.
Oh, for Christ's sake, how can you, a man of God, allow this poor woman to suffer like this?
I am doing God's bidding. Besides, after a while, you get used to the screams.
Please record a possible numb spot on her buttocks.
So far, I would say this doesn't look promising for Madame Farber. First, we find marks of the devil, and now a numb spot. Unfortunate for her. Still, no confession. Executioner, what have you planned next?
I will continue by tying her securely to a chair with this rope to make sure she doesn't wriggle too much. But first, I still stoke the fire in preparation for my next surprise.
Please proceed. That will give us time to read Mrs. Kepler more of the charges against her. It is true you also wanted to seduce the blacksmith's daughter to follow the trade of witchcraft, as well as having told the same woman that there is neither hell nor heaven, but that if one dies, everything would be over, just as it is with the senseless beasts.
That should prove I am not a witch. Witches believe in spirits and fairies and devils. I do not. Mortal men are the only devils I have known.
Is it true that you told this girl, if anyone practices the fiend's trade, that then the person would have a good life and possess many wonderful things, that witches eat the best food and drink the best drink, that you could not praise it enough?
These are all lies. I told her that if she learned the art of healing with plants, she could earn a living, a modest one. No woman gets rich mixing and selling herbs. It is merely a more honorable profession than the other choices she had at the time.
Is it true that you gave the barber's apprentice who had cut your hair a potion so that he fell seriously ill at once?
Many people suffered his same ailment. It was not caused by my potion.
I am ready with the poker.
Very well, bring it out.
You recognize this object, don't you? Feel the heat. It does not even touch you. Imagine what it will be when I hold it against a woman's tender skin. You see, first I prod for spots of numbness. Now I have to check for places that cause much pain. Do you want to confess?
Please, can't anyone stop this?
Stop once you confess.
No, never.
I'll let you select where I should begin. Where did the devil plant his first kiss on you? Your cheek, your neck. Now I will start with the bottom of your feet. It always gets the best results. Shall I give you a moment to prepare yourself? A prayer, or maybe a confession? Wake up! I am not done with my poker. It is still hot.
You must make him stop. How can the two of you get used to doing this to others, innocent or not?
Madame, you look pale. Shall I continue with the charges against you? True that you touched the 2-year-old calf of the saddler and that it died?
The stupid farmer fed it a bad batch of straw, probably full of poisonous insects. He knew there was nothing I could do to save it. It should be obvious that they only testified after all these years, hoping that if I were convicted, they would be awarded damages.
Not necessarily so. These are old accusations acquired by law to show a long history of witchcraft before a person can be convicted. They seem to have proved that in your case, but if you like, let's skip all the other charges concerning livestock.
Anything to speed up this questioning. You make it hard to think straight.
Next, is it true that the butcher was injured by you on his foot at the marketplace when he sold his meat, where he sold his meat, and that he has endured great pain for some time, and in turn you remedied his pain?
His own wife testified I didn't touch him at all. Maybe he dropped something on his foot. Anyway, I graciously offered him an herbal potion to stop the swelling, and he recovered. How is that a crime? He should be grateful.
True that during the time you were preparing your slander case, you injured the cobbler's girl on her arm, so that the girl endured much pain.
Oh, dear God. I merely poked her on the arm with my finger. How do you expect me to think when you keep torturing that poor woman? You should stop persecuting us and instead do your job and investigate those lying, poisonous tongues that falsely accuse me and her and cut them out and nail them to the pillory.
I softened the lady with a bit of hot poker. Shall I continue with the next stage of persistent persuasion?
I had hoped this wouldn't be necessary, but yes, please, go ahead.
Now you will begin to see what makes me the most feared executioner in all of Europe. With these pincers, I can remove your ears, nose, tongue, or just pinch off small pieces of skin anywhere I choose. I can do it slowly or quickly. I can do it with or without heating up the tips in the fire. It is less painful when it is quick and the ends are red hot, but then there is there is so much more blood.
You are only a sadistic animal, an insane one, if you think torturing innocent women is something in which to take pride.
I am a master of my trade and paid well for it. You think you are better than me? Wait until I make you beg for mercy. Then your opinion of me will change. I will make you apologize to me 100 times over. And you think about that for a while I heat up the pincher.
Madame, it is recorded that your local constable advised you that he could not keep quiet about your criminal charges and was obliged under oath and office to report the same. True that you, the accused, ardently implored the constable to spare you and not forward a report to the chancellery.
That is true, but anyone falsely accused would ask for mercy.
He continues to state that you promised him, the constable, a silver cup if he would refrain from reporting you. The constable accepted neither gift nor offering, but included these things in his report to the chancellery.
It was a last desperate attempt to avoid a trial that has no basis.
True that afterward you did not leave to walk home, but walked directly to the courthouse out of the upper town gate. True that the court ordered your arrest and to appear before the court in person and defend your misdeeds, and that you, by you running away, gave strong evidence that you caused bodily harm to the accuser, Ursula Reinbold.
My family advised me to flee because it was obvious that I would not be safe remaining in town with this conspiracy to convict me. Johannes used this time to put together my defense. I returned to face the charges, didn't I? If I were guilty, I would have remained in Grants.
True that even some of your friends consider you a witch and have knowledge of the several wicked acts. True that the general consensus in Nuremberg is that you injured the accuser and caused her the reported bodily injury. True that the accuser would much rather pay 1,000 coins than be subjected to the unspeakable agony she endures daily.
Ursula, I can barely bring myself to say her name. She was my closest friend. Now she is not only betrays 30 years of friendship, but accuses me of a vile crime that would cost me my life and soil the reputation of my family for generations. Don't you listen to anything I say? Why make me talk if you don't listen?
It is impossible to reason with you. I must say that if you were so innocent, you would have shown tears and repentance at your trial, or at least to me, who has your life in my hand. It is natural to cry. Even God uses natural disasters to make his errant children repent and cry for his mercy.
Tears weaken you and drain the strength I always needed to survive. I had to play the role of a man too long to act like a feeble woman now. If reason doesn't work with you, I doubt tears would either. Have you ever freed a suspected witch because she cried? I think not. You just get used to it, like with the screams. Only God's betrayal can make me suffer.
I should say you are suffering now, or maybe not enough. Executioner, you may proceed with the princess. Perhaps at least we will extract a confession from Madame Farber.
Now, my lady, don't move. I will begin with pinching off a small piece of skin from your arm, just to let you taste of what is to come.
Stop. I can't bear anymore.
Are you ready to confess so soon? I haven't even begun to use my favorite tools yet.
Don't confess, my Frau. You must not confess.
I do confess. Just let me die in peace.
Recant before it's too late.
Well done. But before we release the witch, I must know her accomplices. Have her name other witches with which she has conspired.
There are none.
There, I am sure more of Pincher will help you remember.
Please stop. Okay, I will give you names. I danced in the forest with the devil, and Candace Stout was there.
Warden, take down that name. And Frau Farber, did you ever see Frau Kepler at the dance?
Frau Kepler? You mean Catherine Kepler? Is she the prisoner?
Yes, she is. So what?
You didn't tell me it was Frau Kepler. That woman cared for my mother when she was deathly ill. She took care of her until I could return home a week later. I cannot do this to her. Keep her money. I'm leaving. Untie me. You're on your own.
I don't think so. You will stay until you honor our agreement. So again, did you ever see Frau Kepler at this dance?
No, I did not.
See if this changes your mind.
No, I did not see her.
Stop him. Don't you see he is trying to make her lie?
I see you hesitate to name your accomplice. Did you ever see Frau Kepler at this dance?
Oh, stop.
Madame Farber says yes. She saw her.
No, that is not what she said. I never met this woman. It is not true. The executioner is lying.
And what was Frau Kepler doing? Was she just dancing or just participating in an orgy, or both perhaps? You have already named her. There is no harm in telling me more about what you saw now.
Stop. Let me go.
She says both. I heard both.
Sire, what do I record?
Record whatever the executioner says. It is not necessary to record the witch's own comments.
And so there is no confusion with whom was she cavorting? Was it with the devil?
Oh.
There you have your answer. Her answer. The Kepler woman was cavorting with the devil in the forest.
Madame Kepler, you have been named by a fellow confessed witch. This could be the final chance you have to confess and avoid torture yourself. You will die regardless, but a confession will save your eternal soul. I can recommend that you be humanely strangled or beheaded before facing the executional fire.
Please, you must believe me. He is forcing her to lie.
You are obviously lying now. You have too many witnesses who swear you are a witch. Your life is over. I only ask you to provide me with the names of your accomplices, and I can have your suffering ended. I hear your sons are near bankruptcy from defending your case. If you love them at all, you would confess now, while there is enough of your estate left to pay off the debts.
I will gladly name my accomplices. First, Frau Reinbold and Constable Einhorn, and then every person who accused me, even the warden here and your executioner. I will not surrender as easily as did this poor lady.
Is that a threat?
Go ahead then. Do with me what you want. Even if you were to pull one vein after another out of my body, I have nothing to admit.
The pincher is capable of much more, and you should fear it. Have you not heard of Frau Hausmann? It was only a few years ago that our same executioner here marched her through the city, stopping 5 times before reaching the place of execution. At the first stop, he tore off her left breast with irons. The second stop, he tore her right breast. The third, he tore open her left arm, and so forth. On the place of execution, she was burned alive.
For God's sake, have mercy on me. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever.
Innocent or not, there is nothing more I can do that will make you confess. Your armor is thicker than mine. Like your son Johannes, I will lay down my saber of justice and simply pray to God that I have not let a witch go free. Warden, release her chains and let her leave. Her family is waiting outside.
The end.
Whoa.
Good Lord.
That was tough.
Yeah.
And the end is so weird. Like, and he's just like, she prayed to God. She can go home now. Like, the end is so weird.
She did live. She did live, but it was through Johannes, I think, that she got off. Not, I mean, this scene.
This is based on a true story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I found. Yeah.
But the torture was fake, basically, right? I mean, the torture was just fake. And were they actually going to torture her, or was it all just a sham?
For what reason, though? To make her confess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they couldn't really torture her. Maybe they weren't actually allowed to do that.
Well, the Lord's Prayer is the trick.
Apparently so.
I guess.
Next time I'm in a South American prison, I'll know.
Exactly. Same thing. I'll remember as well.
I'm glad I learned that when I was a kid. That's one of those things that's stuck in your head. I think I can recite that.
Nah.
That's because you had so many of them to say after confession. That's why you got it.
I only know the part that's in Jesus Christ Superstar. You'll get power and the glory forever and ever and ever. Yeah, that's it. I got all my Judaism comes from Fiddler on the Roof, and all my Christianity comes from Jesus Christ Superstar. That's all I got.
And that's the way it ought to be. I